Make sure you have completed the retrieval practice on Microsoft Forms before watching the rest of this video. The link to this is found under the retrieval practice section of this assignment on Microsoft Teams. As you watch through this video, make notes on any information you learn. This can be in the form of bullet points or a mind map. Today's lesson is about Russia and its development. The learning purpose is to be able to explain what development is in order to explain the development of Russia. In order to do this, we are going to describe what development means, we're going to explain why Moscow can be seen as developed, and then we're going to explain why Russia as a whole isn't evenly developed. In geography, development is the process of people reaching an acceptable standard of living or quality of life. Every country in the world is at a different stage of development. If a country is developed, it has reached an acceptable standard of living for all people in the country. If it is developing, it is changing for the better, but has not reached an acceptable standard of living for all yet. When deciding if a place is developed, we have to explore if there is evidence of three types of development: social development, economic development, and environmental development. Only if a place has high levels of each would we say it is overall developed. Social development is meeting people's needs within a country. This can include education, healthcare, and good quality housing, as well as democracy and peace in the country. Economic development involves the economy, which is made up of jobs, money, and trade. This can include people in the country having access to a wide variety of jobs, a strong industry, and having high personal wealth. This means they have disposable income each month to buy luxuries. Environmental development is the protection of the natural and built landscape. This includes ensuring clean air and water, as well as the environment being cared for, such as a lack of vandalism and graffiti. The country would also be biodiverse, which means it has a variety of plants and animals. Russia is classified as an emerging developing country, otherwise known as an EDC. This means there are areas within the country that have the highest level of development. Standard of living is very good in these areas. However, there are also areas within the country that are developing, and standard of living is poor. Many believe that the capital city Moscow is an area that can be seen as being more developed than other areas within Russia. The following arguments support this claim. Moscow has a higher employment rate of 74% compared to the Russian average, which is 58%. This means that 74% of people living in Moscow has a job. All homes in Moscow are supplied with clean water from Mosvodokanal, which is the water service company for Moscow. Moscow has a literacy rate of 99.7%. This means that 99.7% of adults living in Moscow have the ability to read and write. Life expectancy is better in Moscow than the rest of Russia. In Moscow, you live on average to 78 years old, compared to 74 years old in the rest of Russia. Every person has the right to free healthcare in Moscow, and there are currently 44 doctors per 10,000 people living there. The average wage in Moscow is 70,824 rubles per month, which is around about $1,000 per month per person. Moscow tops a list of cities by percentage of green space at 54%. This includes parks and woodland. Moscow has an air quality score of 27 out of 300, compared to 224 out of 300 in Jinghong, China. If we look at the chart, we can see that 27 is counted as good air quality, but 224 is very unhealthy. Moscow is home to the third highest number of billionaires of any city in the world, and has the highest number of billionaires of any city in Europe. As previously mentioned, whilst Moscow is seen as developed, many other places in Moscow are not seen as having a good standard of living. Research has shown that urban areas, which are towns and cities, such as Moscow, tend to be more developed than rural areas, and this is the countryside within Russia. For instance, the Republic of Ingushetia is a rural area of southwest Russia, near the border with the country of Georgia. It is seen as the least developed area of Russia. Moscow and Ingushetia are different in many ways. As previously stated, in Moscow there are currently 44 doctors per 10,000 people, meaning there is a good access to healthcare. However, in Ingushetia, there are only 12 doctors per 10,000 people. In Ingushetia, the number of registered unemployed people was 23,000, or 10% of the able-bodied population. This means that 1 in 10 people in Ingushetia does not have a job. Many people who work in Ingushetia work in farming. However, in Moscow, the unemployment rate is only 1%, meaning that 1 out of 100 people does not have a job in Moscow. The number of people living in poverty, which means being extremely poor, in Ingushetia was reported as 35% in 2015, compared to only 9% of those living in Moscow. The average wage in Ingushetia is 7,000 rubles per month, which is around about $234. However, in Moscow it is 70,000 rubles, about $1,000 per month. Life is very unstable in Ingushetia. According to the Human Rights Watch in 2008, the Republic has been affected by corruption, a number of high-profile crimes, and this includes kidnapping and the murder of civilians by the government in Ingushetia, anti-government protests, attack on soldiers, and attacks on officers. This means that the Russian government has had to send in many police officers and soldiers into Ingushetia. They constantly monitor the citizens and also treat the citizens of Ingushetia badly. Exit this video now and complete the Word document found under the Output section of this assignment called Student Activity Is Russia Developed?